Yo, what is going on YouTube? This is episode 3 to my DR650 engine rebuild series in preparation for my Africa trip. In the previous video, we reviewed my rebuilt crankshaft that I had Millennium Technologies rebuild. Today, we'll be reviewing and rebuilding my Nova wide ratio B transmission gear set. Let's get to it. Today, I'll be taking care of the DR650's Achilles tendon, the gearbox, by rebuilding and installing a Nova wide ratio B gear set. Apart from a handful of documented catastrophic gearbox failures, the DR650 transmission is widely regarded as a durable and reliable transmission. Although it had evident, untapped potential, Suzuki kept it the way it was all these years to keep the manufacturing costs down, hence the DR's affordability to date. DR enthusiasts got together and had Nova Racing over in the UK make a replacement third gear set as a solution for the third gear failures. The third gear is prone to failing, most of the time leading to catastrophic engine failure. This is due to the gear ratio spacing. The third gear sits right in the middle of the usable power-bound range where heavy, sustained torque is applied. The third gear set was a success, and Nova later produced a complete 5-gear gear set. When strengthening one area, the weakest point is moved somewhere else, so this product makes perfect sense. Nova offered the gearbox in two formats, wide ratio A and wide ratio B. Both gear sets lower the first two gears and increase the third gear through to fifth. It's really the best of both worlds. It makes trail riding much easier without compromising highway gearing with highway speeds. The A gear set utilizes both stock transmission shafts. However, unlike the A gear set, the B box comes with the input cluster pre-built, utilizing a custom input shaft made by Nova. I am a perfectionist and I know how critical circlip installation and orientation can be. So I've decided to press out the input cluster, that's the one that came pre-built, and rebuild it from the ground up, along with its counterpart, the output cluster. I need to be certain that the oil feed holes are aligned as they should be and that the circlips have been correctly installed. Keep in mind that the Suzuki manual states that this procedure can only be done twice before it's necessary to replace the shaft and the gear. I've taken precautionary steps and purchased a new shaft from Nova. Let's get to work. As always, preparation is key, so I have the transmission schematics printed out with the respective parts lined up in chronological order. Although the gearbox is technically new, all parts have been washed thoroughly. I want to make sure that there's no microscopic residue left from the machining process. Let's take care of the output cluster first. This one utilizes the stock output shaft. It's important to make sure that this shaft is in good condition and that the splined area where the small sprocket slides on isn't damaged. First, let's install the bushing that houses the second gear. Now it goes without saying that all moving parts receive a brush of assembly lube. This step is critical. Secure that gear in place with a circlip. Now, circlip orientation is critical. Install the flat side facing east. This ensures that the load from the second gear presses against the circlip, which has its flat side against the groove of the transmission shaft. The theory behind this is that the flat side of the circlip has more retail space and it doesn't give the circlip a chance to potentially slide off under load. The service manual demonstrates this with a schematic. It's also critical to correctly position the eyelets of the circlip. You want the gap in between the circlip's eyelets to be in between the two transmission splines. The idea behind this is to maximize the circlip's real estate on the shaft. Let's slide on the 4th gear and move on to the circlip. We want the flat side of this circlip to be facing west. However, don't install it in its groove just yet, instead position it just before. Followed by this washer. Let's install the bushing to the 3rd gear and slide on the 3rd gear. This lock nut washer combination is what will hold the 3rd gear in place. It's a very tight fit, and the most effective way to lock this in place is to temporarily slide the previous circlip out of its groove and reinstall it once they're in place. Hence the reason why I didn't install the circlip into its groove. Only once you have that lock washer combination together can you slide the circlip back down. Make sure that the eyelets are correctly positioned. Let's go ahead and slide on the 5th gear, followed by the washer. Next, the bushing that houses the 1st gear. Now for the 1st gear. When installing the final washer of the assembly, it helps to secure it in place with a dab of marine grease. Wipe off the excess and voila! That's us done for this cluster. Let's put this cluster to the side in an airtight box and move on to the input shaft. Now a quick side note. Before I dismantled the shaft that came pre-built by Nova Racing, I measured a couple key points. These measurements will help me judge how far I should press the 2nd gear on during reassembly. I measured the distance from the end of the 2nd gear to the bung. That result was 11.18 millimeters. The distance between the end of the 1st gear and the end of the 2nd. That result was 94.86 millimeters. And finally, the distance between the start of the 1st gear to the tip of the shaft. That result was 106.33 millimeters. Now taking the cluster apart was straightforward. I used some heat with my gear puller to remove the 2nd gear and the rest came off easily. When doing this, make sure to protect the tip of the shaft with a softer metal like brass. Let's start with the bushing that the 5th gear sits on. Slide on the 5th gear and then the washer. Secure that in place with a circlip. Position that circlip with the flat side facing east and slide it on. Let's go ahead and install the third gear and then the retaining circlip. This circlip has the flat side facing west. Let's install the lock washer and then slide on the fourth gear. Assembly, we're going to press on that second gear. I'm using a 6-ton press. That should be more than enough for the job. The key here is to press the gear on flush. The manual calls for some wicking Loctite. I'll be using some Loctite 603 retaining compound. Be cautious to not get it on the neighbouring fourth gear. Whilst pressing on the second gear, don't heat it. It's a press fit and not a shrink fit. First, I start by squaring it off by hand. Be cautious to not get any of the Loctite onto the neighbouring fourth gear. This is a press it in as you go sort of situation. It may require a couple shots. The required clearance between the second gear and the fourth gear is 0.2 to 0.3 millimeters. Now to finish things off, I'm going to place this shaft with the other one and leave them both alone for 24 hours. This should give the Loctite enough time to cure. So there you have it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next episode where we'll be rebuilding and sealing the crankcases. Cheers.